Hi everybody, welcome back. I'm Shannon with Raising a Blessing blog, and this is video number 6 in our Crafty Christmas Gifts on a Budget series. I'm pretty excited to share this idea with you today because I wanted to try out different concrete planters and share them as a crafty gift that you can give to someone on your list. Now, the fun thing about this project is there's a whole range of ideas that you can play with anywhere from a classy little concrete planter like this made from a Sonic cup to a fun and quirky planter like this made from a styrofoam head. So we're going to share with you all of the different methods and planters and even a few extra projects that we threw in there. And we're going to tell you which ones were the most beginner friendly and the easiest to accomplish and which ones really fell apart, literally. So we've got a lot to share with you today. I'm very excited. I hope you find some inspiration in one of the planters that we talk about today. But if you have any questions throughout this tutorial, feel free to just drop them in the comment section below. If you're on YouTube, go ahead and click subscribe. And if you're on Facebook, make sure that you're following us so that you continue to see these ideas, because we don't just do this for Christmas. We roll out fun and quirky ideas like this all throughout the year. So thank you so much for being here. I look forward to getting started and sharing with you some of the fun we had throughout this project. If you have any questions, like I said, feel free to drop them below, but let's get started. Here we go.
This gift is a great idea to give someone for their home, office, dorm room, as a Secret Santa gift, and so much more. Coming up, we're going to go over all of our favorites and exactly how we achieved the results we got. But here's a little sneak peek just to get you inspired. We have so many different projects that we played with in order to share some great ideas with you. As you'll soon see, some of them were big hits, while others quite literally fell apart. But either way, we're going to share them all, including our best tips for beginners like us. The one supply that you'll need for all of these projects is Quikrete, and in order to work with the Quikrete, you'll need water, a mixing tool, a mixing bowl, mask, and some nitrile gloves. I won't be going over exact instructions on how to mix your Quikrete, but what you want to do is mix your Quikrete according to the instructions on the label and make sure you use the recommended safety equipment as well. Mixing Quikrete is super easy and usually only requires water, but please make sure you follow the instructions exactly as the label indicates. So let's get started. Here are the beginner-friendly projects that worked well for us. First up, the Styrofoam Cup Planter.
Hi everybody, I'm very excited to share this tutorial with you. If you have any questions as we're going through, feel free to drop them in the comments below. But first up, we're doing this absolutely adorable little succulent planter that's made out of a styrofoam cup. So let's jump right into this. First off, you're going to need a styrofoam cup. So get yourself a styrofoam cup. I grabbed a medium-sized one from Sonic. And you don't want to use paper. I wouldn't recommend that because styrofoam holds its shape a lot better. But go ahead and grab yourself a styrofoam cup. Fill it about 3/4 of the way with your mixed concrete. So you fill it about 3/4 of the way. Why not to the top? Because when you create the cavity for the plant, you're going to have the concrete start to come up the sides as you push down to create that cavity. So now we've got our styrofoam cup, we've got concrete in it. How do we create the cavity? To be perfectly honest, the first time that I did this, I used my fingers. I just dug down in there and pushed and created it. I wouldn't recommend this because I don't think that it was the most efficient way to do it. I was actually a little bit disappointed. I don't think my cavity for my plant was quite large enough, or it just didn't look the way I wanted it to look. So what do I recommend? Grab yourself some kind of small container, like a small jar, and you could take oil and really lube up the outside really well. Then you can take that and push it down into the concrete to create the cavity that you want. The deeper you push, obviously, the deeper the cavity is going to be for the plant. Now, another option regarding this is you can go to your local thrift store and look and see if they have little pots like this, or of course Home Depot does as well, but we're trying to do this on a budget, right? So if you go to your local thrift store and see if they have any pots like this, I especially like these itty bitty ones because I can take the itty bitty ones and push them down in to create a cavity, and then I can leave them there. That would be a perfect little place for the plant to come out of if that's what you choose. The only thing I suggest regarding that is if you're using a pot that you're leaving in there, make sure that you level it off with the concrete so that when your product is finished, everything is nice and level. So now you have a cup, you have something in there to create a cavity for the plant, you have it filled up with concrete, and you just need to add your cute little straw. So I just grabbed a straw out of our silverware drawer. We happen to have this one from a cup that my son had a while back, and I grabbed it and I popped it right down into the side of that concrete. It doesn't have any purpose other than looking cute, so I wasn't worried about it going straight into the plant or anything like that. I just pushed it about 3/4 of the way down, and then this straw happened to be rather large, so I went ahead and clipped off the top where I thought that I liked where it was sitting. So once you have your sonnet cup filled with concrete, the cavity's been created and the straw's in place, you can let that sit for about 45 minutes. If you are using Quikrete, 45 minutes is all that you need. It is sufficient enough time for that concrete to set to where you can pull your cavity creator out. So if you are using one of these and you're leaving it in there, you can skip this step. But if you opted for something like a jar to create the cavity that you plan on pulling out, after about 45 minutes, go ahead and pop that out. Why do I do this? Because 45 minutes is sufficient time for the concrete to set and not cave in, but it also allows you to get this out with more ease. If you wait longer than 45 minutes, you're going to have a lot harder of a time getting this out. So now that we've popped out our cavity creator, we are going to let that cup of concrete and the straw sit for about 24 hours. After 24 hours, we're ready to peel away the cup. So this is all dependent on if you are using Quikrete, because Quikrete sets a lot faster than traditional concrete. So now you're going to start just grabbing your cup, your styrofoam cup, and just start peeling it away. And it's going to peel right off that concrete. You shouldn't have any issues whatsoever. And you will end up with a cup that looks like this. Now, I will tell you, all these little cracks and pockets, I love them. I think it creates a lot of character in the cup. If that is not your cup of tea, hop out there on YouTube and they'll give you instructions on how to make the Quikrete not have those pockets, how to create it in such a way that you don't end up with that. But all of my projects, they look like this because I actually like the character of the cracks. So you've popped it out and you have your planter. It has the cavity and it has the straw. If everything looks good at that point, take a bucket of water, submerge it completely in water for about 3 to 7 days. When you submerge it in water for 3 to 7 days, it's going to make that concrete cure 50% harder based on everything that I've read. So submerge it for about 3 to 7 days, pull it out, let it dry, and pop your plant right in. At that point, you're ready to gift it. So here is to your beautiful concrete succulent planter.
Next up, how to create a concrete planter from a glass container.
When crafting a concrete planter from a glass container, one of the most important things is picking out the right glass container for your project. Now, we like to pick up little things that sit around the house, such as this old chip dip container that we cleaned out, but we also shop the thrift stores for really unique containers that have designs on the inside. Because when a glass bowl, such as the one we use for this one, has that very unique design on the inside, it means that it's going to create a very beautiful and unique design on the outside of your concrete planter. We picked up the glass bowl that we used for this project at only 75 cents. So that's a fun thing to do when you're at the thrift store, is really shop for some glass containers that will work well for this project. From there, you put your concrete into the glass container, filling it about 3/4 full. Then you're going to need something that you can push down into that container that will create a cavity or a hole for your actual plant. Now in this case, if I was using this chip dip container, I grabbed my spray oil and figured that was the exact size that I needed to make this project work. I oiled the outside of my container and I would push it down in there. That's why you only fill up the concrete about 3/4 of the way full, because as you're pushing this down, it's going to displace the concrete that's in there and really push it up. So you should end up looking something like this. Just make sure that your cavity is deep enough that you can allow room for your soil and roots. Now leave that in there for about 45 minutes and then go back and pull that container out so that it leaves that cavity inside your container. 45 minutes with Quikrete should give you sufficient amount of time that that cavity holds shape, but you can also remove your items very easily. It's not going to give you a lot of difficulty in pulling it out. Let that glass container sit for about 24 hours and then grab you some heavy-duty brown paper or a towel, wrap up that glass container, and here's kind of the trick to this. Once it's fully wrapped up, you're going to want to tap it gently with a hammer, just hard enough to break the glass, but not hard enough to break your concrete container. So tap it a few times gently if you need to, but don't tap hard or you'll break right through that concrete. And that's another tip I would give you with this project. When you are choosing an item to put in there to create that cavity, make sure that it's leaving enough room between the cavity and the edge of your mold that you get a nice thick layer of concrete, not something that's super thin. Because when you tap it with the hammer, you want it to have that strength of the thickness. So once you have the glass broken and you're left with your concrete planter, you'll want to submerge it in water, completely submerged for 3 to 7 days to allow it to cure and really harden at 50% more by being submerged underwater than just sitting out on your counter somewhere. After about 3 to 7 days, you can pull it out, let it dry, and you're ready to plant. So there you go. There's how you give a simple and beautiful gift for Christmas.
Next up, how to craft a concrete planter from a styrofoam head.
All right, friends, if you jumped on this video specifically for this planter, then you are my people. I love a quirky, fun, crafty project that I can give as a gift that will be a conversation piece long after the holiday season. So this one was so much fun to make. It was so beginner friendly. This was my first shot at it. And friends, I did not put a lot of effort into this. I didn't try to make it smooth and pretty and look realistic. I wanted it to be quirky and fun and just kind of goofy. So if you want one that's a little more finished than this, that's a little, more classy than this, then you could jump out on YouTube and there's a lot of really great tutorials on how to make a concrete head planter. But if you want just the quick tidbits on how to get this accomplished, the first thing you'll want to do is grab yourself a styrofoam head. You can pick these up on Amazon, or you can jump out. Walmart has them in their craft section. A lot of Walmarts do for about $5. And you can get male or female. I have both, but I just went with the first one I grabbed for this one. Then you'll want to carve out a cavity in the head to create the planter. Just my little tip here, I did not make my cavity as big as I should have for the size plant that I put in it. So make sure you're considering the size plant you're putting in when you consider how big of a cavity you want to create. And then from there, the steps are super simple and straightforward. So I'm just going to, instead of talking to you here, I'm going to show you how we got it done. Here we go.
Step one is just a generous application of your concrete to your styrofoam head, making sure to carve out those eyes and define the nose so that in step two, you can really go in 24 hours after step one has dried and add details such as the mustache, the lips, bigger eyebrows, more defined ears, and a more defined nose. You'll also note by looking at this picture that I greased a small square baking dish and placed my styrofoam head down in there and added concrete down in there in order to create a bigger base for my planter, which makes it more stable. So step one is just adding the concrete, wait 24 hours for it to dry, and then step two, you add the details, wait 24 hours for that to dry, and then you'll want to completely submerge your planter in a bucket of water and leave it there for about 3 to 7 days so that it can cure while it's wet. Doing that will make the concrete harder and more stable and will allow it to hold up better for use in the future. Next up, we're going to talk about these cute little concrete door stops.
The next concrete gift that we're going to very briefly go over are these cute little homemade door stops. And the tutorial that I watched on this actually used a small milk carton like this eggnog box, and they cut half of it away, poured the Quikrete in, and then took a rope, tied duct tape around each end of the rope because that makes it a little easier to push it down into the Quikrete. And they pushed it down in there and let it sit for 24 hours, then just peeled the box right off, and they had their door stop. At the time that I made mine, I didn't have a box like this, So I grabbed, I seem to collect these glass spaghetti jars because I just hate throwing them away. I always feel like there's something I can use them for. So I have a bunch of these glass spaghetti jars that I had cleaned out. So I poured my Quikrete in one of these, and then because the opening is kind of small, it was a little tricky to get the rope down in there, and you can kind of see that my rope is off-centered because I was using pliers and trying to get it down in there. So it's a little trickier than using something like a box. But I filled it about halfway, used my pliers, got my rope down in there, waited about 24 hours. Then I wrapped this up in heavy brown paper. You could also use a towel. Tapped it a couple of times with a hammer and very carefully unwrapped it and peeled the glass away and disposed of it. And I was left with my cute little concrete doorstop. So that's how easy and beginner friendly it is to make this cute and unique little gift. Hope that helps.
Here are a few extra tips to remember. When you are creating the cavity for your planter hole, make sure you make it deep enough for the plant you have in mind. Allow your planter to harden for 24 hours and then submerge it in water for 3 to 7 days to fully cure. If you're going to use your planter outside, make sure and add a drain hole. You can do this by pushing a straw all the way through the bottom of the planter. Next up, let's talk about our somewhat beginner-friendly projects that sort of worked for us. First up, the concrete hand planter and the concrete phone stand.
The first one that we're going to talk about that's kind of beginner friendly but also is a bit challenging are these concrete cell phone holders and the concrete planters. Now, these are very beginner friendly when it comes to the instructions on how to accomplish this look, but the challenge comes in not losing fingers. I probably made 3 of these before I got one that didn't lose fingers, and with my potted one I actually lost fingers and used Loctite extreme glue to put them back on. So let's first talk about how you accomplish this look. There's some tutorials out there that really go over step-by-step instructions. I found some on YouTube that were really, really great. But the gist of this is you take a glove, I used a latex glove, you pour your Quikrete down in there, and then you use objects to prop up your glove in whatever position you're wanting it to set in. So for the cell phone holder, I used a box in the back that was secured to hold it up straight. I actually used a piece of candy to prop up the thumb, and then I set a little weight down on the inside to create like a little notch where my cell phone would sit once it was finished. And then I had to make sure it was sitting level on a counter so that once it dried or cured, it would be sitting level and sit up straight. The pot is a bit more challenging because once you get it in the position you want, if you want to secure that pot in there before it dries, while the concrete's still wet, you have to slice open your glove and push that pot down into that concrete so that as it dries, it attaches to the pot. So the instructions for how to make these is quite simple, and it's a fun project, a really fun project. The problem comes in that inevitably when you are doing that, your glove is getting pinched in all kinds of positions. So when you're cupping it like this, the glove is getting pinched in between the finger and the palm of the hand. This one especially, because you're kind of creating a notch down in the bottom for the cell phone to sit in, it's creating a thin layer of concrete already. So once that glove kind of gets stuck in that crease or crevice, after 24 hours when the concrete dries, you're supposed to slowly cut the glove off. Well, you could peel the glove off, but really I cut it. I take little scissors and I work my way carefully to peel the glove off. The problem comes in that because you already have this thin layer of concrete, and because the glove is kind of pinched in there, it creates weaknesses between the palm and the fingers themselves. So the instructions for this are very easy. Keeping all your fingers attached as you remove the glove is where the challenge comes in. Like I said, I probably made about 3 of these and lost 2 and managed to keep 1 where I didn't lose a finger. On the planter itself, I made that one just to see if I could accomplish it. I lost 2 fingers on this one. I lost the thumb and I lost the index finger. So what I did is I used Loctite Extreme Glue, glued the fingers back on, and then your last step with these is you'll want to, 24 hours after they dry, you'll want to drop them into a bucket of water, submerge them completely, and let them sit in there for 3 to 7 days. Allowing them to cure underwater will make them quite a bit more sturdy, will allow them to dry and be able to hold up to more use than if you let them cure just sitting on your countertop. So there you go. That's why this one is fun and quirky and worth doing, totally worth doing. But although it's beginner friendly, it has its challenges as well. Hope that helps. On to the next one.
Next up, the concrete lamp.
Okay, friends, next up is the concrete lamp. And I could not do this week of concrete gifts without at least trying out the concrete lamp. What I didn't anticipate is that I was going to have to make two, because the first one I really cut some corners and ended up with something that resembled a concrete lamp, but here, see for yourself. Okay guys, so the reason why my initial one turned out a bit wonky was because I tried to cut corners and use a cardboard mold instead of a wood mold. Now, what I'm going to recommend, because this project is so detail-oriented and it has very clear step-by-step instructions, and the reason why I say that this one is still beginner-friendly but has its challenges is because I learned the hard way that you really have to follow the instructions step-by-step on this one. You can't really cut corners or play with different ideas quite as much as you can with some of the other projects. So what I'm going to recommend is that if this interests you, go ahead and hop out there on YouTube and just type in DIY concrete lamp. What you're going to find is that they're going to instruct you to build a wood mold like this. Once you have your wood mold, there's going to be a few additional steps, including how to set up your electrical stuff inside that mold before you pour the concrete. When I followed the step-by-step instructions on YouTube, I actually came out quite successful with my lamp. As you can see, it works. Step one, yay! But also, it turned out great. The only reason mine's a little more shallow is because I ran out of Quikrete. So mine is not quite a square, a full cube. It's a little more shallow, but it worked out great, and I love it. Now, I will mention one additional challenge with this project, because like I said, I was going to share with you guys the good and the bad. Because you have electrical in the box and you're pouring the concrete over the electrical components, it's very difficult to tap or shake the box to get all of your concrete level, because when you start doing that, your electrical stuff starts moving. This piece, this lamp socket, is actually held in place by double-sided tape when you pour the concrete in there. So as you're tapping the box, you're trying to keep that double-sided tape from moving, because if it moves, well, you're going to end up like the first one that I did, where it's the bulb doesn't even sit in there straight. It sits in sideways, and so it does create some challenges. So you can't tap the box and really level out your concrete as much. So the biggest challenge I found once I followed the step-by-step tutorial was really getting my concrete level. So you can see mine is a little bit wonky. It's got some areas that aren't exactly flat and level. But overall, it was a very beginner-friendly project. It just required really following the instructions step by step. So here's just a little peek at how I did mine. But for the step-by-step instructions, you want to hop out there on YouTube and just type in DIY concrete lamp, and you can find lots of great tutorials for this project. Here you go.
The DIY tutorial that I followed had me build a wood mold and seal the 4 corners, then drill a hole on the side to run the wiring through. Then it had me wire the lamp socket and face it straight down, held in place by double-sided tape. I then oiled the entire inside of my wood mold before pouring the concrete. Now, the tricky thing here is how long to let the concrete sit in there before you remove the mold. The DIY tutorial that I followed said to let it sit for 24 hours, but I could not remove my concrete from the wood mold. So I let mine sit for about an hour and a half and then immediately removed the mold so that the concrete would hold its shape, but I could get it out from the mold. Next up, how we made these concrete bookends.
Concrete bookends. This one I'm very excited to share with you, and I put it in the little bit more challenging bracket because it's a little less forgiving as far as the different details of it. However, it's still very beginner friendly. And the reason why I came up with this idea is because I have a nephew who absolutely loves reading. He is a bookworm, but he also loves Star Wars. And I thought, how can I combine these two? I can make him bookends with a Star Wars figurine inside. Picked him up for $5. I think these are totally adorable. However, I did have a few bumps along the way and found these to be a bit more challenging. So I bumped them up to the less beginner-friendly category, but still very doable. These are fun, and you could use almost any character you can think of. You could go pick up some Star Wars characters, Spider-Man, Superman, Barbie. You could really do this. The possibilities are endless as far as what you would put in your bookends. But I'll just give you a very quick run through of how I made these. And then if you are really just taking your time and paying a bit more attention to detail than I did, such as, for instance, I ran out of quick read when I was making this one, so this one ended up more shallow than this one. But if you were really going slowly and paying a bit more attention to detail, this can turn out to be a really fun, personalized, great gift for someone on your list. So here's just a quick review of how I made these. Here you go.
For my project, I started off with a cardboard box mold where I simply created a divider down the middle, sealed all the sides, and oiled it up on the inside. But if you wanted to do a step up from this, you could actually build a wood mold, and it would create more defined corners, and your bookends would match a little bit better. From there, I poured my concrete into the mold, and while it was still wet, I pushed my figurines into the concrete. Let that sit and dry for about 24 hours before you move on to the next step. Step 2, pictured here on the right, is where you're going to want to find some kind of base or container to create a mold for the bottom of your bookends to create that L shape. You'll want to make sure it's greased, place your bookend inside of it, and pour the concrete into that mold. Now let that sit for 24 hours to fully harden, and then you can pull it out and use a piece of sandpaper to sand down any rough edges or corners. At that point, submerge it in a bucket of water for 3 to 7 days to fully cure. Then you're ready to gift it. As promised, I'm going to share with you the good, the bad, and the ugly. Here are the projects that totally bombed.
Okay, friends, so it's time for me to share the ugly with you. And I am not saying that this is something that is not beginner friendly, because all of the YouTube videos I watch, they look super beginner friendly. But I am sharing with you that this is something that just absolutely didn't work for me. And so beginner to beginner, there is some kind of magic, some kind of trick, some kind of art to this that I'm doing wrong. And I wanted to share it with you as a fair warning. And maybe if you have the solution, please drop it in the comments below, because I would love to try this project again if I knew what component of it I was missing. But here's what I'm talking about. You'll see a lot of YouTube videos out there where they have a container like this and they grease the inside of the container. Then they pour the concrete into that container, grease the outside of another container, and push it in to create a beautiful concrete bowl. Now, I wanted to do this because I was trying to create a farmhouse utensil holder for my mom for Christmas, and I thought, oh, this would be so much fun. But I did this project 5 or 6 times, ruined several bowls, had to bust several glass, and used all different kind of oils, and I never came out with a single one that worked. So let me tell you what I tried so you know kind of the different steps that I took. The very first one I did, I took a container like this, just a cheap little, let's say 10-cent container, one of those little Christmas containers at the thrift store, and I sprayed the inside with oil, poured my concrete, and then put a container on the inside. Now the tutorials will tell you to let this sit for 24 hours, and that's what I did. But I was completely unsuccessful at getting my concrete out. I only got the inner container in there out because I busted it up in order to get it out. So this was one where I couldn't get it out. So I thought, okay, maybe I didn't use enough oil. I went on to a canola oil that I poured in. So my next container, I poured the canola oil in, and I really lubed this up to the point that I had canola oil dripping out everywhere. I thought for sure this was just going to turn out messy, but it was going to work. Well, 24 hours later, the container would not come apart from the concrete, and I ended up busting the entire concrete. As you can see in this one, just trying to get it out is creating all kinds of cracks. So even if I got it out, it would be just a mess. It wouldn't be nice at all. So my last ditch effort, I used Crisco. I just grabbed And I mean, I rubbed it everywhere thinking, okay, surely this will create a barrier between my bowl and my concrete where I can get it out. All of the tutorials, like I said, show this to be a very easy process where it slides right out. Here's my thought, guys. Maybe it's the fact that I'm using Quikrete. Maybe you have to use traditional concrete for this project, because even with the Crisco, after 24 hours, I could not get the concrete out from the mold. So here's my fair warning to you guys. I am not sure what the extra tip is here that I'm missing or what I'm doing wrong, but if you are watching tutorials on a bowl of some sort lubed up with a bowl on the inside and the concrete in between, just know that I really struggled with this project. I tried it 5 or 6 different ways, and unfortunately I was never successful. So I wanted to share that kind of fair warning, beginner to beginner, that unless you know kind of the key piece of this that I'm missing, this may not be as beginner friendly as some of the videos make it look. So I did want to show you just a sneak peek of how I kind of set mine up, so that if you do know the key component that I'm missing, you can kind of see how it's set up. Because what I did is I created a bottom one, put one inside, and then I put a rock on top to really hold it in place for that 24 hours while the concrete's set. So here's my sneak peek of how I did it. There's my fair warning, and I hope that helped some of you guys avoid some of the same frustration that I had with this project. So here's just the sneak peek for you, and yeah, that's the end of my ugly.
Here are some final reminders for making concrete planters. First off, make sure that you are considering the size of your plant when you carve out the hole in your planter. You'll want to make sure your planter hole is deep enough to accommodate the size plant you plan on using. Allow all concrete to harden for 24 hours before you try to remove it from the mold. Submerge it in water for 3 to 7 days to fully cure. For outside planters, make sure you add a drain hole. If you have containers that you do not plan on breaking, make sure you use and remove those containers within 45 minutes of setting in order to be able to get them out with more ease. Use solid, inflexible molds for best results. If you need to break a container, break glass, use heavy brown paper or a towel to protect yourself. You can use acrylic paint and concrete sealer to seal and paint your planter when you're done, but this is an optional step. Should you need to make minor repairs, Loctite Extreme Glue seems to work best for me. Thank you so much for joining us again, and don't forget to hit that like button and follow and subscribe so that you continue to see great ideas like this one. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, or at our website on raisingablessing.com. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you can catch other crafty gift tutorials like this one. Stick around for a bit. We've got a little bit of extra bonus content coming your way.
Thank you so much for sticking around for just a couple more minutes. I wanted to share an idea with you that I didn't personally try out, but I think it would be a great idea as a small and a bit easier gift idea using concrete, or Quikrete, sorry. And that idea is to take silicone molds, such as the ones we used for other projects in this series, and use it to create paperweights. I love this idea because you can add little things to it, such as you could just pour the Quikrete right into a heart-shaped silicone mold and allow it to sit for 24 hours till it hardens, pop it right out and submerge it in water, and that could be a cute little paperweight. But you could also use a rectangular shaped one. We use these when we make homemade soaps. You could use one of these, and you could take a heart-shaped rock, or you could take a seashell and you could sit it upright, or you could lay it down in there while the concrete is still wet, and you could add that extra little thing to it. And these come in all different shapes and sizes. We have one that's diamonds. We have a puppy-themed one. We have fish bones. We have so many different kinds at home, and you can often find these for like 99 cents at the thrift store. So if you can put your hands on some silicone molds, that's another idea that you could consider, is making just some fun and unique and personalized paperweights. Like I said, with seashells or with pebbles or with heart-shaped rocks, or really anything you can think of that you could truly add to this and give it a lot of character and individuality. So there's another unique idea that you could use the Quikrete for to make a fun and personal gift for someone on your Christmas list. Happy crafting, friends, and I hope you have a blessed and Merry Christmas.